the very first one, we got to talk about just the Marathon brand. Like, where did that come from? How did that go about? And shout out to Black Sam, his brother. Um, I I would say that was one of my favorite parts, even though it was the beginning. The breakdown between Black Sam and JP, and how just the beginning of everything, and maybe because it's his brother, so it felt a little bit different. But I think that was going to be that's my favorite part. So you're going to see a lot of Black Sam. I'm just letting you know this. Shout out to Black Sam. But here is the origin of the Marathon brand.
As Nip is working on the next project, he's like, this next one I'm gonna call the Marathon. And so I'm like, what? Nah. What are you, man? We gonna run Bullets Ain't Got No Names to volume 10. Like, don't, like, what you talking about? We on, right? He like, nah, bro, trust me. And him and JP have been tapping in a lot and reading books on branding. And, you know, JP was taking photos, black and white photos, and he was really, you know, creating logos. And so he laid the vision out, you know, to us. And that created the Marathon brand. And I didn't fully understand it at that point, but when the project came out, I seen how wide it went. And I seen, like he said, he like, man, I don't like the energy at the shows. You know, we hopping off of stages, getting into fights, shootouts, and that's not the energy I want to bring. I want to bring like inspiration. And so I didn't fully understand it, but once the project came out and I started seeing the difference. And from that came the Marathon Continues mixtape. And, you know, the clothing brand, trying to figure out what to call the clothing brand, came Marathon Clothing. And, you know, like you say, Marathon OG, and just that, those are the branches that came from, you know, from the Marathon brand.
Yeah, this is powerful, man, because, you know, I think this is so critical because a lot of people have things going, but they don't see that as a brand. And for several reasons, whether they think that brands only associate with personal brands, they don't really see the connection that way. There is a thing such as business brand as well. And so I think of, and it's crazy because some people will call brand as it relates to businesses, culture. And they're really two of the same, if you think about it, or one of the same, where culture is the common thing that people associate with what is acceptable and not acceptable in your ecosystem, environment, or amongst your team. In a lot of ways, that's a brand. You trained your people, you set out certain values, you acted a certain way, and that's become the norm of what is socially acceptable within that environment. Your customer experience is a brand, right? And so I think that the minute people start to recognize that branding in general isn't just associated with a person or something that you're doing for yourself, that it's in everything, you start to want to initiate those things a little bit more regularly and with a lot more intention, if you will, because for him to make that move from something that was already working, but again, I go back to that word, have the foresight to say, okay, if we flow with this name, I don't know how much of a runway we're going to have.
Right.
But even the switch from, you know, what they had with Bullets Ain't Got No Names to the Marathon, it's like, no, the Marathon is a long thing. Like, I want this thing to be forever. So it's as much as vision and strategy come together, right? It's like, no, let me speak this into existence. I want this thing to run forever, but also because I want people to start having almost a connection with what we're doing other than what we're putting out with the way the mixtapes were being labeled at that time, which is only relevant for a specific group if you really think about it, just based on the name. So I like of course, that move early on. But to all the listeners, man, just know that what you have is a brand, whether it be personal or business. There are things that you're doing that you can start to just add simple colors or do like certain things to it. Immediately, it goes from, oh, this thing that I do just every so often to, oh, there's a system to this after all. There's like a method behind the madness. So I appreciate people who take things serious when you almost have no reason to.
Yeah, I like what you said about the name, because it makes me think more of, he was thinking at the time with Bullets Have No Name, to then switch it to the future,
Mhm.
right? I think when we speak on branding, some of us are just so focused on what's happening now, to our audience now, and to the environment that we're in now, and what we are trying to solve now. And where we have to sit and think about the 5-year, 10-year plan, right? And does that vision match with the name? But also in that same context, like Sam said, hey, the energy changed. What is our brand attracting? Like, what kind of energy is it attracting? And what kind of energy are we giving out as well? That's very important. Just with the name, it gives a certain type of energy, to
Mm.
where one was of a gang culture and a violent situation, to where now we're talking about a mindset. Now we're talking about legacy. Now we're talking about longevity. That's two different situations, which you can then attract, you know, a, a mass crowd, where there's nothing wrong. And let me be cautious with this, because there's nothing wrong with talking to a specific group of people, right? There's nothing wrong with that. If that's where you see your vision in the next 5 to 10 years of still serving those people, by all means, get the right brand name, get the right logo, get the right mission statement, right? Give the right tone, figure that out, imagery, visuals that all match, that specifically talk to that group of people. Absolutely. But with Nip, he saw it to reach the masses. It's not just about that group of people he was involved with at the time, not even just LA. It was more, let me give the truth to the world. Let me change the mindset to the world. Let me build uh the mindset of longevity to everybody, because that's what I'm dealing with, right? So when we are looking at, what is our brand name? What is the energy that it's producing? What is the energy that it's receiving? Because he was getting fights at his
Mm.
shows. In that interview, Black Sam said it went from having fights and he didn't like that energy, to people approaching with resumes.
Mm.
Two different types, right? And when we are thinking about growing as a brand, scaling as a brand, we have to attract the right energy, because at the same time, remember, we're going to grow a team down the line. And how are we supposed to attract the right team players if we're putting out the wrong energy?
Yeah.
And and some people don't even think it's that deep. Like, yo, it's just a name. Like, no, it's not just a name. It represents who you are and who your company is, and the people that are a part of it. It represents a lot more. So that's why when we're looking at these different brands, and how we look at some as luxury, how we look at some as availability, how we look at some as the elite, and some that are just like us. There's a reason to that, based off how they brand themselves. So it's so important in the beginning, even if you catch it in the middle, because he caught it pretty early, but he was already there. It wasn't, what are we calling ourselves? What are we calling ourselves? He already came out with projects that was working. But when we get that vision, when we get that purpose, and if there's a need to switch, switch. That's it, switch, because his stuff was working. But was it working to where his new vision was? No. So switch if you see that. So somebody may be listening to this now and being like, yo, this is the confirmation that I needed. It is.
Yeah.